Week 8 of the Iowa high school football season is upon us. I'm joined by Nick Fox. We are back after a week off. Had to miss last week for some other projects we had going on, but nevertheless, we are back. We got some big games. We got playoff rankings on the way for the smaller classes. We got 2 weeks left in the regular season for 3A through 5A. And I do want to bring up before we get started that we did drop 3A through 5A bracket predictions on YouTube. You can find those rankings on our YouTube under IA Sports right where you're watching this video. Our ranker did a great job breaking down RPI predictions, all that good stuff. A ton of good knowledge in there and really a good idea of where teams might be heading once postseason assignments do get announced. But Nick, we got some players, some standout players 8 weeks into the regular season that we want to talk about that maybe we haven't talked about enough or maybe deserves more love. So who's your guy that you've kind of had an eye on to start this season?
Yeah, right now I'm definitely going with Rashad Davis. He is coming up on arguably the biggest game of the season of all the classes. Number 1, Southeast Polk. Number 2, Dowling. They are clashing this week. Rashad Davis, he is an X factor. First in 5A rushing touchdowns, 18. Second in 5A rushing yards with 1,035. Dowling, of course, undefeated. And he is going to be absolutely the player to watch. He is going to be the difference maker of that game. And I believe that I heard you say that you were going to that one. So that'll be awesome to watch to see how that film turns out. But without a doubt, it's Rashad Davis. He's been stellar this season. And it'll be interesting to see how he does against arguably early 5A state championship matchup here.
Yeah, that one's going to be a ton of fun. We were talking about this before the show, Nick, about what these teams are really going to bring to the table in this game where the playoffs are on the horizon, matchups are looming, and really these teams kind of secured those 1 and 2 seeds, kind of all but secured it at this point. So we're going to talk about a little bit down the line, but my standout player, and I think it was a total fluke that today he ended up just committing to Iowa State to be a preferred walk-on is Aiden Flora. Man, this guy is just a stud. I think he's one of the funnest players I've ever seen in person with my own 2 eyes. He's number 1 in touchdowns in 4A with 31. He's one of only 2 players that has 30-plus touchdowns right now, excluding 8-man, him and Preston Rise of Monticello. And he's beating you with the legs first type of guy. He's got 1,444 rushing yards, which is second in 4A, and as a quarterback, that's pretty nuts. He's got 20 rushing touchdowns. He's averaging 12.4 yards per carry, Nick, which is just black. Every time he runs the ball, he's getting a first down. That's first in 4A by a long shot. And he can also beat you with his arm, 798 passing yards. Nothing crazy, but it's enough to keep you honest. And I think that's the big thing with him. He's got 11 passing touchdowns, only 4 picks, and he's completing it at a 66% clip, which is really, really solid. And he's a big reason for ADM's success. They're without Brevin Dole now, as we know, for a few weeks. A really bummer of an injury, but he's a star, and he's going to give him a shot to win every game that he's playing. And so super excited to watch him and the ADM Tigers the rest of the way. But Nick, before we get to our picks, we got a little bit of a new segment that we kind of brainstormed a little bit. It's a buy or sell segment. We've got 2 statements for each other, and we're either going to buy them or we're going to sell them, whether we believe, whether we don't believe. So my first one for you, Nick, buy or sell. The 2 teams, only 2 teams have been wire to wire number 1 in our polls, Southeast Polk and Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock. Do you think those 2 finish the 2023 season unblemished and as state champions?
I am going to sell on this one, and I only say that because Van Meter is looking like, well, ironically, like some dogs. They are fantastic this season. I mean, honestly, looking at Southeast Polk, they have just been fantastic. I haven't seen really any flaws. The closest game they've had is that Johnston game, and apart from that, they've looked spectacular. Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, much of the same.
Yeah.
But I think Van Meter, that game that they will inevitably play against them this season, is just too much of a question mark. Do I think that they will finish undefeated? Sure, but not as state champions. I got the Bulldogs.
They got a big one this week, too, against West Lyon. That's a top 4 matchup in 2A. So really, Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, they're in a tough district, no doubt. They've been tested throughout the year, and they've handled every test so far. But I think 2A is looking like a crash course between Van Meter and Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock. So I like that point.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll move on. My statement for you: buy or sell a team outside the top 10 in any class will make the dome.
I think I'm going to buy that. I think, and I have a few teams in mind, but I think the way Iowa high school football has gone this year, we've just seen so much craziness. And 7 classes, I think there's bound to be one of those sleeper teams, those 10 through 16 RPI teams that get in. There's the District of Death. There's a ton of good teams there that aren't going to be seeded high that I think could make a run. One team that honestly pops out in my head right now is Harlan. I mean, a team like that, they're going to go in as a wild card. They're going to go in as a double-digit seed. That's a scary team. I do not want to play in the postseason. So I'm going to buy that. I think a team outside of the top 10 in some class will make the dome. I don't know who it is exactly, but it's going to be somebody. Speaking of the District of Death, Nick, do you think they get 5 of 6 teams into the postseason? Again, that's Webster City, Humboldt, Hampton, Dumont, Cal, Algona, Clear Lake. 5 teams. Do you think all of them get in the postseason?
You know what? I would like to sell. I think I'm going to buy on this one, actually. I think 4 of them are definitely going to make it.
Hampton, Dumont, Cal's 0-3.
Hampton, Dumont, Cal is the only question
mark.
They
need some wins. But they get Charles City this week.
They get Charles City this week, which I think will be a win for them.
I'm not sure who they end with, but either way, it's a shot for them to boost their RPI, which I think is important. Exactly. And playing in a district like that, at this point in the season, when you're on the outside looking in, you're on the bubble, you want those games where you're playing a team that can help boost your RPI, and that's exactly what they're facing. So you're buying it.
I'm buying it.
I like it.
I liked Hampton, Dumont, Cal, throughout the season, and they got some pretty tough losses. I think that the start of their downfall was the Humboldt game.
Yeah, they got a Nevada win, which
they got the Nevada
that's looking
win.
Really good now.
Absolutely. I think I'm gonna buy on this one. I think that Hampton, Dumont, Cal can win out. I think they'll find their way, which will be absolutely ridiculous that 5 of the 6 teams would make the postseason.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a tough time. All 5 of those teams, they really deserve it. So we'll move on to our last one of this segment. Cade, will we have 3 or more teams to repeat as state champions from last year? And I'll give you kind of a prop bet here. I'll give you over under 2.5.
I think I'm buying that. And just going off the top of my head, like I said, I like Harlan in 3A. They're going to be a sleeper. They're going to get in. But even like the heavy favorites, you got to think Southeast Polk, they're reigning. I mean, in all odds, they're the favorites. You got 2A, you got Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, and Van Meter. If they meet in the dome, and if they meet in the state championship, there's one because they both won it last year. You got Grundy Center, who's looking really, really good. And even Remsen St. Mary's. I mean, they're an 8-man. They're up there. So I think we will have 3 or more state champions repeat from last year, which I think is fun because some of them are in the same class. Some of them are fighting teams in different classes. I think it adds a different dynamic. So it's kind of crazy. I'm picking a team outside the top 10 to make the dome, but I'm also taking 3 or more of the same state champions from last year. So I'm gonna buy that. I think that's a fun question, and I'm gonna go with it. What do you think there? I guess I didn't ask you. What do you think?
No, I think I agree with you.
Buying it?
Yeah, I think I would buy it. I agree with you. I think Southeast Polk definitely has a great chance. I think it's no question. I think it's going to be Van Meter, Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock in that state title game. And I think it's kind of interesting to see, like, Williamsburg was in the state title last year.
They're runner-up to Central Lyon.
Runner-up to Central Lyon, and now it's looking like they might make another trip. I mean, obviously.
In a class above.
In a class above. And I think that would just kind of be funny to see. They couldn't get the job done against the 2A team, and now. But I think I would buy this. I think that there's plenty of teams. I think a lot of the state title winners last year are looking really good again this year.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great question. I think that.
And we didn't even bring up 4A, Xavier. I mean, they're right up there and they're competing. I will say 4A is just an absolute gauntlet at the top. But if they get in, they're going to have a shot at it. I will say our projected bracket, I don't know if you saw it, Nick, but our projected bracket had them and Bondurant playing to go to the dome, which would be a travesty because both those teams should be in the dome. And 4A is going to have a few teams that should make it. We're going to have dome caliber matchups in 4A right before the dome, which is going to be a ton of fun, but also stings because you want to see all of them make it. But that was a ton of fun. I like that. I like that buy or sell. I think we're going to stick with that for for next week. But moving on to what you guys are all probably tuned in to listen to, our locks and our dogs. We're doing pretty well right now. I was 9 for 14 last week. Nick was 8 for 14 last week. We're both hitting at about a 60% clip, and assuming you hit all your locks, you just need to hit a few dogs, which I'd say we're doing pretty good at this point. Nick, so I'm going to lead into you and let you talk about 5A. I like your picks here.
Yeah, so my first pick, my lock this week, this is kind of, we want to get away from the number one teams playing the bottom of the barrel team. So this week I'm going number 5 Bettendorf over number 10 Cedar Rapids Prairie. Prairie, they've got their last 3 losses are number 1 Southeast Polk, number 6 Ankeny, and number 3 Pleasant Valley. So that's not exactly an easy stretch of games that you're playing there. Bettendorf's defense has been, one of the biggest stories for them. Only 10.7 points per game allowed. Their one loss coming to Kennedy a couple weeks ago. And Jake Scholes, 21.15 yards per catch, 6 of the team's 9 total receiving touchdowns. That's just a rattle off a few stats for them. I think Bettendorf can win this one. They've looked like an extremely dominant team, and I think that Bettendorf could possibly be a dome team. I think the Central Iowa competition is ridiculous. Like, you look at a team like West Des Moines Valley, going into the season, I thought that they could have been, a dome team, but they have, the wheels kind of fell off. They started losing a lot of games, just because of the competition in Central Iowa is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that would be my lock for this week, and my upset is number 11 Cedar Falls over who we kind of just briefly talked about. Number 4 Cedar Rapids Kennedy. They both have a common opponent. They both lost both close games to Pleasant Valley. Pleasant Valley, beating up on these teams, and these are 2 no-fly zone teams, you could call them. 15 combined interceptions, which I'm not sure how much of a factor it's going to play. These guys, both these teams lean more towards the rush game, but nonetheless, it's more restricting on a possible pass game. So number 11 Cedar Falls over number 4 Kennedy, I think that would be a pretty cool headline.
Yeah, that would be a big upset nonetheless. Yeah. I will say, with a possible weather situation coming tomorrow night, Kennedy getting to play in a dome is pretty nice for their air raid, and Cedar Falls obviously. So playing in a dome is going to help in these types of scenarios where you might have a little wet conditions. But moving on to my picks. Oops, I just tabbed the wrong one. Talking about Pleasant Valley, they are my lock. They got Iowa City West. They're looking to kind of put a stranglehold on that number 3 RPI spot and lock up right behind Dowling in Southeast Polk. I like them over Iowa City West, and I also like my dog in Ames over Sioux City East. That's just kind of a gut feeling, honestly. Nothing really behind it. Obviously, they've both played some CIML competition and struggled. Ames, they've hung with City High. So that's really just a gut feeling for me. I'm going with the little Cyclones to upset Sioux City East, who's kind of on the bubble in the RPI and looking like they're going to sneak in at this point. So that'd be a big upset for in RPI terms. But before we move on, we do have to briefly talk about Southeast Polk and Dowling. I'm going to be there, so I'm not going to pick it so I can spare myself some booze. All I know is it's going to be just a fantastic game. This is what we've been waiting for. We've been circling it on our calendar for the past few weeks. Nick, I'm not asking you to give me a pick. Just give me what you're looking out for in this one.
I think that I definitely agree with what you said. I mean, both of these teams know that there's a very good chance that they could meet each other in the state title game. There's no secret about these two teams. Dowling, they're going to hand the ball off to Rashad Davis, and Southeast Polk's going to go with the air raid. Connor Moberly's having a fantastic season. So, both these teams know what to look for, and, I completely agree with you said that they're not probably going to show too much of that playbook just because, you don't want to show too much that second time playing. So I think this is going to be an absolute fireworks show. I think it's going to be an instant classic. I honestly couldn't tell you who I think that could win this game. I think it's pretty evenly matched. I think Southeast Polk has a bit of an edge just because they have a little bit more variety in their offense. They can hand it to CJ Phillips. They can throw it with Connor Moberly. I feel like Dowling is really run heavy, but like we just talked about a little bit before, Rashad Davis, he can make things happen when he gets the ball. So that'll be an extremely exciting one to watch.
I'll give you my bold take for this one. I don't think either team is going to score over 24, 25 points. I think this is going to be a low scoring. I think Dowling's going to want to control the clock on the ground. I think weather, possible rain in the area, I think that's going to cause a factor. I think Southeast Polk might have to stick to the ground game a little more. I just think it's going to be one of those hard-nosed 16-13, like drag them out. One of those just fights in the trenches. Exactly, yeah. So that's my hot take. I'm not going to make a pick. Obviously, it's going to be an incredible game. That's all I'm hoping for, and I've been really lucky. Every single game I've gone to in the past month has been a one-score game. So I've really hit the nail in terms of picking really good games.
I went on a three-game streak on last-second plays. The Southeast Polk was the interception.
See, we're doing good.
We're doing good.
The big matchups in Iowa are living up to the hype. There's no doubt about that. But moving on, so Southeast Polk Dowling, we're not making a pick because we're boring. We're just saying it's going to be a really good game like everyone else is saying. Moving on to 4A, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got my lock this week is number 6 North Scott over Clinton, even though I just talked about trying not to make these kinds of picks. But, I mean, this one is, North Scott, I got to give it a little credit. Last week we didn't have a show. Kind of vague pick. I picked CCA to upset them last week, and it was a pretty close call. CCA, they just narrowly missed that win, just a 2-point victory for North Scott. But they catch a break this week on a winless Clinton squad. This is definitely going to be a Kyler Girardi numbers boost and an RPI boost for sure. And looking at my upset for this week, number 11 Norwalk over at number 3 Lewis Central. This is one of those games that there's not a ton of games that I saw where there could have been an upset like this. I don't know if Norwalk can pull it off. That would be a pretty it's a tall task for sure. Lewis Central is an extremely talented team, but I think this is just one of those games that it could happen. Aiden Harder of Norwalk, 1,800 passing yards, 17 passing touchdowns, so he is having a fantastic season, one of the top quarterbacks in Class 4A. So I think, do I think Norwalk will win? I personally don't think that they can. I think they have a chance. I think they have the best chance of the ranked matchups that we have, but that's kind of where I'm at with that.
I like it. Moving on to my 4A picks. Ooh, it's 3A. I'm having the wrong ones all the time. There we go. My lock is Glenwood. I think Glenwood locks up the runner-up position in that district with Norwalk. Lewis Central, Glenwood's well on their way to being the runner-up and getting the automatic bid. And my upset is Newton over Gilbert. Gilbert obviously just coming off a tough loss at Bondurant. They kind of had a nice start to their season, 6-0, some winnable games at the start, and now their gauntlet begins. They got they've got 3 straight playoff games. I'm gonna call it, because they might end up on the outside of the RPI looking in. So they really need to win one of these next 2. Gilbert, they've got Newton, they've got Pella, 2 teams they're competing with to get into the playoffs. So really huge games for Gilbert on the horizon. I can't underestimate that enough. But I'm going with Newton at home. I've liked how Newton's played. They've got some competitive guys, and they always play competitive ball. And I think just another gut feeling here. I think Newton beats Gilbert on their home turf and in that district play. Moving on to 3A, where we got some big games. The District of Death obviously is always hosts some big games. Nick, you're taking Williamsburg to bounce back, I see.
Yeah, I've got Williamsburg. I think that they played an extremely tough game with Solon. I did predict that one. I did pick Solon as the underdog in that one, and that came through. That was a huge win for Solon. But I think Williamsburg finds their feet in this one, and they get a win. Grinnell's they've been a fantastic team. They've had a great season. But Williamsburg, despite the loss, they are still a elite juggernaut in Class 3A.
Yeah.
I think they're definitely going to pull off a win here. Like I said, Grinnell, a good team.
They're going to be the best runner-up in the RPI. Williamsburg is.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? They're going to be a lower seed, and I would not want to.
No,
I would not want.
I want nothing to do with Williamsburg. Absolutely, yeah. And my upset pick is Algona over Webster City. So Algona, they found their way back into the Class 3A rankings last week after they pick up a huge win over Humboldt, 34-17. Alex Mansky, he's been spectacular this season. He's got over 2,000 total yards this season, 25 total touchdowns. And Webster City, they've started to, they tripped up a little bit a few weeks ago, dropping one to Clear Lake in West Delaware. Jackson Cherry, he's up over 1,000 yards finally after the last game. And, Algona is looking really good. I love this game. I think this is going to be a really good, gritty game that this is going to be played, and I've got Algona winning this one.
And really, I'm going to give it to you because I think it would be an upset, but it's one of those where, like, are you really surprised? No. Rankings-wise, it is an upset. So, and I 100% agree with you. Algona has really come out of the woodworks, and a team that we kind of thought in the district of death was kind of on the outside looking in, and they give Clear Lake a run for their money. They beat Humboldt by a good margin, a really nice win. And all of a sudden, Algona is looking like a top contender in that district of death and might finish runner up there. Moving on to my picks as I pull them up quickly. My lock is also coming from the district of death, and it is Hampton-Dumont Cal. Like we talked about them, they need a win. They got Charles City this week. I like them to bounce back. They're 0-3 in that district, which it sounds not good, but they've all been to ranked teams. Some tough losses there. They have a win over Nevada. I still believe in the Bulldogs. I really, really do. So I'm going to pick them over Charles City. And my upset, West Delaware over Independence. And this is one where I think the weather is going to be a big factor. It's in West Delaware, a district title. West Delaware is coming off a loss to Waller. They need to win this game to put themselves back in district title play. And they're going to rely on the ground. Like we talked about E.J. Miller and Independence. They like to throw the ball, but you never know with these wet conditions how teams can adapt and how well they're able to adapt to those scenarios. And West Delaware, they're going to rely on Brent Yankovic. He's their leading passer, leading rusher. The ball is going to be in his hands a lot of the night. So I like it just because of the weather. I think that's going to play a huge factor, and that's a big reason for my pick there in West Delaware. Before we move on, Nick, we got another big game that neither of us picked, and I rightfully so. Nevada and Creston. Mm-hmm. What do you think? What first pops in your head when you think? And I think you're going to be there. So don't pick it. Don't get booed. Don't get booed. Don't pick it.
I'll be going to this game. I think this is going to be, a great game. Obviously, I don't want to say much, but Nevada. They took a loss. I can't remember exactly who it was they lost to.
Cal.
It was Hampton. Oh, that's right. Hampton-Dumont Cal. Obviously, Creston still undefeated, still one of the, if not the top team, Class 3A.
Yeah.
And this is a battle for the district title over Harlan is the like we've been mentioning about the outside looking in. So I think it's going to be a great game. I'm excited to go and watch this one, and we'll be able to watch the rewind next week on that one.
Yeah, I really think after Nevada kind of took that early loss to Hampton-Dumont Cal, we kind of not ruled them out, but they kind of just fell down and out of like contention. And then all of a sudden they beat Harlan by 19. And I mean, if you're comparing apples to apples, Creston beats Harlan by one possession in their home play on their home turf. Nevada beats Harlan by 19. I mean, really, Nevada is going to be scary to look out for. I think that's a sneaky good matchup. I think not a lot of people are giving Nevada a shot just because of how good Creston has been, and rightfully so. But Nevada's scary, and they got a guy in Kason Stevenson who is not going to be fun to tackle, and he's going to be a one-man wrecking crew if he has to be. So that is a ton of fun there. Moving on to 2A, Nick, what do you got?
Yeah, so my first one, my lock is Van Meter over Interstate 35.
That's a good one.
And Van Meter, I mean, come on. If you look at the scores of the games they've played, in their last 3 games alone, it's 63-6, 70-0, and 48-10. And you could keep going.
Yeah.
Van Meter dominates every single game they play. This is, we talked about this before. This is right. This is my favorite to win the state championship. These guys, they look solid on every single stat that you look at. Austin Baumover, he's been spectacular, over 1,000 yards total, and he's got over 20 total touchdowns. And that's what I'm going to be looking at for this one. I think that he's going to have a great game. And also looking at Ben Gordon, he's got just short of 1,100 yards and rushing and 16 total touchdowns. So this is a really solid team. I think that they're definitely going to pull this one off. And this one is probably the most exciting game in this class.
2A, I'd say all year in 2A, this is the biggest game. Yeah.
I would say so. Central Lyon, George Little Rock, and West Lyon. I've got West Lyon pulling off the upset in this one. Central Lyon, they've looked, obviously, like we've been mentioning this show, they've looked spectacular this season. But West Lyon, this is going to be their toughest task that they've faced this year. And I'm looking at West Lyon to pull off a huge upset in this game.
Yeah, I like it. And like we said, this is the biggest game in 2A. That's a possible dome matchup we're looking at right now in that class. And speaking of a possible dome team, my lock, Monticello, I think they're a team that kind of falls under the radar in 2A. They took that early season loss to Mount Vernon by a lot, and obviously rightfully so. Mount Vernon, a competitive team in 3A. But they've just been on a tear ever since then, and they're home to one of the better players in 2A, and Preston Rise. And I think everyone's talking about Van Meter, Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, and rightfully so. But in all odds, one of those teams is going to have to beat Monticello to go to the Dome. And I don't know if I'd want to be that team. I think I want to be on the other side of that bracket, not having to face him in the semis if that's how it all lines up. So I'm picking Monticello over Tipton. Tipton's had a nice year, picking up a lot more wins and than what expected. And my upset, Greene County over Des Moines Christian. Two teams that have kind of struggled in district play. Greene County, who has been really high in our rankings, they've fallen completely out. Des Moines Christian still hanging on, but Greene County is home to some playmakers, and they've got a receiver in Jack Hansen. We haven't talked about it at all, but he's one of the best in the class. 800 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns. He's got 8 of his quarterbacks, 12 touchdowns through the air. They have got some common opponents that they've both kind of struggled with. A really big game. If you want to kind of try and sneak back in through the RPI, I know that a lot more teams get in 2A through 8-man, so there's a little bit more room for error there, but both of them have struggled with Kemper. Both of them have struggled with Roland Story. So I like Greene County to go on the road and beat Des Moines Christian in a little bit of an upset there. That's one of a more like low-key upset compared to your 4 versus 1 upset, but you took that one, so I couldn't go with that one. Moving on to 1A, Nick, what do you like?
Yeah, I've got my lock for this week is MFL Marmac over Central Springs. MFL Marmac, they have been just a complete team this season. You know, Sumner Fredericksburg is their only loss this season. It was a tight game. It was 13-9 was the final score on that one. But looking at this team, you know, they've got some good defense. They've got let's look at their quarterback, Carver Bleets Bentine. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. He's got over 500 total yards and 13 total touchdowns. So MFL Marmac, they don't have any, you know, stars on the team that are putting up, you know, 2,000 yards and 400 touchdowns, but they're a really good team. They've been showing out this season. I think that they've definitely got a win there. And my dog for this week is going to be Denver and Dyke New Hartford.
We always have a lot of Denver fans in our comments. So,
we do.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be happy.
Yeah, I'll give them some love here. They both had a pretty similar games against who we just talked about, FML Marmac. Both of them lost in pretty similar ways. So I think this is a pretty even matchup. Denver's got a little bit of an edge with the 1-win difference, but I think Denver can definitely pull off a win here. That would be huge for them. I believe they just fell out of our top 10. So this would definitely be one that could boost them right up in the rankings, and obviously, most importantly for playoff, the RPI.
Yeah, and I'm not like poking fun at Denver. I genuinely love when people are commenting that stuff because it shows they care. It shows they're looking at our stuff, and we genuinely appreciate that. I know there's always Denver people in our comment section not happy with where they're at, so no, we appreciate you guys for tuning in. We always look at that stuff, whether we respond or not. So,
and there's your test right there.
Yeah, there's your test right here. There's your chance to snap back in. My lock I'm going with is West Branch. I think they're the best 4-3 team in 1A, if that's an award you want to hand out. They got losses to Williamsburg, Dyke New Hartford, and most recently Wilton. So 3 really good losses. I hate saying like good losses because no coach, no player likes hearing that. But all things considered, I like where they're at. They're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be a tough team. Brennan Dale, sophomore quarterback, he's a really scrappy guy. And they're coming off 2 really emotional wins, a 21-17 win against Regina, a 21-17 loss against Wilton, and now they get a chance against an 0-7 Durant team to really get themselves back in the groove before the postseason. And talking about my upset, I think last week this wouldn't be an upset, But Wilton, they go and they beat West Branch. All of a sudden, they're vaulted up to number 6. I know some polls still have Regina higher, but in our poll, they're not. So my upset, I'm going to go with Regina. I like their offense. This is my second time picking Regina as an upset when really it's a top 10 matchup. So is it really an upset? But I like Regina. I think this is still a really competitive team in 1A that you can't count out just because they can score so quickly with Jackson Naive and Gentry Dumont and so many other playmakers over there. So I really like Regina. My second time taking them as a dog. They lost last time, so hopefully this time they can prove me right. And I've done some work with Regina. I really like their program and where they're at. So a ton of fun over there in Regina. Moving on to Class A, Nick, you like the number 1 team to stay at number 1, I'm assuming.
That's a pretty safe bet here. Madrid's been really, really impressive this year. Preston Wicker, he's been spectacular. You kind of compare him to
he's a stud.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. You compare him to another fellow high school football player with Aiden Flora. He's got 468 passing yards and 952 rushing yards. So he has been spectacular. He's been leading this Madrid team to an undefeated season so far, and I think that continues yet again this week over Wayne. I think that they've definitely got a win here. And over to my dog, I've got Starmont over Maquoketa Valley. Maquoketa Valley's been one of those teams that's kind of hung around the middle to bottom of the rankings, and Starmont's been in and out of the top 10.
Yeah.
And I think that they can get it done this week. I think that this is another one of those games where, the rank is different, but I feel like that these are fairly equal teams. Starmont got a really impressive win a handful of weeks ago over Northland, who is the top ranked at that time. And Maquoketa Valley also just coming off of a Northland win. So they do have a common opponent there. Both of them were good games. Starmont's was a bit more impressive with the 27-0 shutout. So that is my pick for this week. I think that's going to be a really fun one to see how that one turns out. But Starmont is my pick for that one. And looking at yours, it looks like you've got West Hancock and Newman Catholic. How do you think that's going to turn out?
Yeah, West Hancock has just been on an absolute tear. They're our preseason number 1 team. They lost to St. Ansgar pretty early in the year, and St. Ansgar obviously proving to be a contender. They're sitting at number 2 and easily could be number 1, if in all honesty. But West Hancock, ever since their loss, they've gone 49-7 win, 62-0 win, 57-6 win over a ranked opponent, and a 41-0 win over an undefeated opponent. So West Hancock, they run that wing T, triple, whatever you want to call it. So tough to stop. I'm not going to be shocked if they are hoisting the trophy at the end of the year. Obviously, a runner-up last year, like we've said multiple times. They're not going to pass the ball unless they have to, and 9 times out of 10, they don't have to pass the ball. They just beat you on the ground. I remember typing up their stats. Their quarterback, I think, has only completed 1 pass the last 2 weeks just because he hasn't had to. Why put it in the air if you don't have to? Mitchell Smith, he's only completed 15 passes all year, and he's got 6 touchdowns and no picks. So that's not a bad ratio. And they just got so many horses running the ball. They beat you in so many different ways. I could talk about them all day because they're just that good and that much fun to watch. So West Hancock, they are my lock of the week. And my upset is Nashua Plainford over Wapsie Valley. Wapsie Valley just recently into our top 10. They actually just gave up their first ever points to a Class A opponent last week, which is insane. They hadn't given up a point to a Class A opponent through the first 4 or 5 games. But I think this week Nashua Plainfield gets them. Nashua Plainfield, they're 5-2. This is for a district title basically, because both these teams with minimal losses inside the district. And Nashua Plainfield, I like what they bring to the table. They've obviously got 2 losses, but one of them's to St. Ansgar, the number 2 team, and they got a guy in Titus Evans, 800 yards on the ground. They got another 700 from Aiden Gellner, and their quarterback is completing 65% of his passes, and he's keeping care of the ball. He's only got 7 touchdowns and 2 picks, so he's doing a good job of taking care of it. So I really like Nashua Plainfield here to win that one and lock up or kind of jump Wapsie Valley in the district and secure a better playoff spot. And Nashua Plainfield's at home, so home field advantage is a big thing in high school football, and I really like it. So that's my A pick.
Yeah, so we'll move on to our final picks of the day, our 8-man picks, and my first one, my lock, is Winfield Mount Union. I love Cam Buffington. He has been the leader not only in rushing, receiving, and tackling. He's been a dual threat on both sides of the ball there. I wouldn't be even surprised if he probably gets some kicks out there as well. You see more and more of that. Winfield Mount Union's definitely got the upper hand here, and I don't think it's really close. HLV not having a great season, 1-7. Winfield Mount Union undefeated, and they are looking to absolutely secure the undefeated season over the next week or so. And I think this could be possibly the favorite of 8-man. Cam Buffington, like we always talk about, the Stars seem to always find their way to put up huge numbers in these 8-man games. And I think it's going to be no different here. And that kind of leads me into a pretty bold pick I feel like I have, which is an upset of Midland over Central City. Yes, I'm saying that. Midland has dominated this historical matchup other than last season when Central City won pretty handedly. But as I was just saying, I feel like the Stars shine in 8-man, and Midland has that with Anthony Harrington. He is over 1,000 yards total. He's got 18 touchdowns. He's got a running back and himself. I didn't even read that. Anthony Harrington, 500 yards, 10 touchdowns. And he's got a receiver, Cale Kress, who's got 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think this is Midland's game to win. Central City is going to be going into this game. They see the record 3-4. They have some common opponents, very different scores, but I am going with Anthony Harrington to lead it the way and get a huge win over a top 10 Central City team.
Just gut feeling, huh?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to go with that. And 8-man, you're either really right or you're really wrong with some of these scores. Moving on to my picks, and really another boring lock, honestly. Clarksville, they got the winless Meskwaki. And really, I only picked them so we could talk about Clarksville because we really haven't gotten to. They upset the number 1 team last week. And I think that's a huge win. I think people are underestimating how big of an upset that was. Gladbrook Rhinebeck was just on a tear and looking like the team to beat in Class 8-man. And then little Clarksville comes in and at sneaky undefeated team and takes them down. And all of a sudden, they're looking like the team to beat. They've got basically 2,000-yard rushers already. Owen Becker, he's got 999. So I'm going to bet he's going to get another rushing yard next week, just a sophomore. But, I mean, McCade Bloker, he's the star, 1,200 yards, 9.6 yards per carry. He's got 23 touchdowns. And like I said, Owen Becker, the 999-yard man, he's got 16 touchdowns. So you got 49 rushing touchdowns as a team. They are putting up points, and they've just shown that they can hang with the best of them. So give me Clarksville as my lock. I'm very confident about this one. I got another kind of bold one with you on the 8-man upset, kind of just taking a shot here. BGM over Moravia. I don't like betting against Shane Helmick, the star quarterback for Moravia, but BGM can put up some points. Last week, putting up 98 on Melcher Dallas, and they've got an 85-0 win over Twin Cedars. They've put up 50-plus points in their last 5 games, and they're going to score. Just a 4-3 record, obviously, but I like what they bring. Kind of another shot in the dark here. Bo Burns, 26 touchdowns, 6 picks. He's also got 16 rushing touchdowns. Like we said, he's one of the stars that can really get you an 8-man, and really sometimes all it takes is one. So it's going to be Shane Helmick, and it's going to be Bo Burns battling it out an 8-man this week, and 2 really star players, and not going to be surprised if Moravia wins, obviously. But BGM wins, I want all the credit because I called it. So that's where I'm at right now. But with that being said, Nick, we just ran through all that pretty quick.
Yep.
That was a ton of fun. We hope you guys enjoy kind of the new segments we kind of brought to the table. Be sure to check out the rankings that we dropped, the predicted playoff brackets. We're going to have a ton of postseason content coming your way. And drop a comment whether you agree or disagree with us, because at the end of the day, we just love that you guys are watching our stuff, and it just means we get to create more of it for you guys. So be sure to like this video if you like this style of video or this style of kind of preview, and we'll catch you guys next week for sure.